Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The sun filtered through curtains across Quinn's bedroom. Clothes were strewn about, covering every surface as if a tornado had swept through a department store. In the center of it all stood Quinn, fingers trembling as they grasped the soft fabric of a floral sundress. Quinn's heart raced, a mix of exhilaration and fear coursing through her veins. For years, she'd dreamed of this moment, of finally allowing herself to be who she truly was. The dress felt right in a way nothing else ever had, like slipping into a second skin she'd been denied her whole life. Taking a deep breath, Quinn pulled the dress over her head, relishing the way the material whispered against her skin. She smoothed out the wrinkles, her hands lingering on the delicate pattern of daisies scattered across the pale blue background. It was perfect. Hesitantly, Quinn approached the full-length mirror propped against her closet door. The reflection that greeted her made her breath catch in her throat. For the first time, she saw herself. Truly saw herself. The dress hugged her body in all the right places, accentuating curves she'd always tried to hide. A smile tugged at the corners of her mouth, growing wider with each passing second. "This is me," Quinn whispered, twirling slowly. The skirt flared out, dancing around her legs. "This is who I'm meant to be." The sound of the front door opening downstairs jolted Quinn from her reverie. Her father was home early. Panic seized her chest, threatening to suffocate her newfound joy. She hadn't planned on confronting him so soon, but there was no turning back now. With shaking legs, Quinn made her way down the stairs, clinging to the banister for support. She could hear her father, Amir, rustling around in the kitchen, probably searching for an after-work snack. "Dad?" Quinn called out, her voice barely above a whisper. "In here, kiddo!" Amir replied cheerfully. Quinn took another deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. She rounded the corner into the kitchen, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure her father could hear it. Amir's back was to her as he rummaged through the fridge. "How was your day? I was thinking we could order." He turned, a bottle of water in hand, and froze. The plastic crinkled as his grip tightened, his eyes widening in shock as he took in the sight of his child wearing a dress. "Quinn." Amir's voice was low, uncertain. What is this?" Quinn's throat felt dry, her carefully prepared speech evaporating like morning dew. I wanted to show you who I really am, Dad." Amir's expression darkened, confusion giving way to anger. "Who you really are? What are you talking about? Take that ridiculous thing off right now." "But Dad, No!" Amir slammed the water bottle on the counter, making Quinn flinch. "I won't have my son parading around in women's clothing. What will the neighbors think? What will your teachers say?" Tears welled up in Quinn's eyes, blurring her vision. "I'm not your son, Dad. I'm your daughter. I've always been your daughter." Amir's face contorted, a mix of fury and disbelief. "That's nonsense! You're confused, Quinn. This is just a phase. You'll grow out of it." "It's not a phase!" Quinn cried, her voice cracking. "This is who I am. I've known for years. I was too scared to tell you." "Well, you should have kept it to yourself," Amir shouted, his words cutting through Quinn like a knife. "No child of mine is going to be some freak." The word hung in the air between them, heavy and poisonous. Quinn stumbled back, as if physically struck. Without another word, she turned and fled up the stairs, slamming her bedroom door behind her. Collapsing onto her bed, Quinn buried her face in her pillow, muffling her sobs. The joy she'd felt just moments ago had been shattered, replaced by a deep, aching pain. How could her father, the man who was supposed to love her unconditionally, reject her so completely? Hours passed, the sky outside darkening as night fell. Quinn lay curled up on her bed, staring blankly at the wall. Her tears had long since dried, leaving behind a hollow emptiness. The house was quiet, save for the occasional creak of floorboards as Amir moved around downstairs. A soft ping from her phone drew Quinn's attention. Reaching out, she grabbed the device, squinting at the bright screen. It was a text from her best friend, Riley. "Hey, Q, how'd it go with your dad? Did you tell him?" Quinn's fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure of how to respond. Finally, she typed out a brief message. "It went badly. Can you talk?" The response was almost immediate. "Of course. Video chat?" Grateful for the distraction, Quinn accepted the call. Riley's concerned face filled the screen, her brow furrowed with worry. "Quinn, what happened? Are you okay?" The genuine care in Riley's voice was enough to bring fresh tears to Quinn's eyes. Between sobs, she recounted the disastrous confrontation with her father. Riley listened patiently, her expression a mix of sympathy and anger. When Quinn finished, Riley took a deep breath before speaking. "I'm so sorry, Q. Your dad's reaction was totally out of line. You didn't deserve that." Quinn sniffled, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "I don't know what to do, Ry. He hates me." "He doesn't hate you," Riley said firmly. He's scared and confused. This is probably a huge shock for him." "But he called me a freak," Quinn whispered, the word still stinging. Riley's eyes flashed with anger. "That was completely unacceptable. But Quinn, listen to me. You are not a freak. You're brave and beautiful and perfect just the way you are." A weak smile tugged at Quinn's lips. "Thanks, Ree. I don't know what I'd do without you." "Hey, that's what best friends are for," Riley grinned. "Now, we need to figure out how to handle this situation with your dad." Quinn sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I don't think he'll ever understand. Maybe I should just pretend it never happened. Go back to how things were before." "No way," Riley said firmly. "You can't hide who you are, Q. It'll eat you up inside. Trust me, I've been there." Quinn nodded, remembering how hard it had been for Riley when she came out as bisexual to her conservative parents. It had been a difficult time, but eventually, they had come around. "So, what do I do?" Quinn asked, feeling lost. Riley thought for a moment. "I think you need to try talking to your dad again. But this time, you need to be prepared. Write down everything you want to say, all your feelings, your experiences. Make him understand that this isn't just some whim." "You think that'll work?" "It's worth a shot." Riley shrugged. "And if he still doesn't listen, well, we'll figure something out. You've always got a place to stay with me if you need it." The offer brought fresh tears to Quinn's eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude. "Thanks, Ree. I don't know what I'd do without you." "Anytime, Q. Now, why don't you start working on that letter? I'll stay on the call if you want, for moral support." Quinn nodded, reaching for a notebook and pen. With Riley's encouragement, She began to pour her heart out onto the pages, hoping that somehow the right words would reach her father's heart. Meanwhile, downstairs, Amir sat at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. The events of the afternoon played on repeat in his mind, each recollection bringing a fresh wave of confusion and anger. How had he missed this? Was he such a terrible father that he hadn't noticed his own child struggling with what? Gender identity? The very concept felt foreign to him, something he'd only ever heard about on the news or in passing conversations. Amir's phone buzzed, startling him from his thoughts. It was a text from his friend, Michael. "Hey man, we still on for poker night tomorrow?" Amir stared at the message, suddenly desperate for someone to talk to. Without thinking, he hit the call button. "Amir?" Michael's voice came through the speaker. "Everything okay? You never call on a weeknight." "Michael, I don't know what to do." Amir's voice cracked, betraying his emotional state. "Whoa, slow down. What's going on?" Amir took a shaky breath. "It's Quinn. She... I don't even know anymore. Quinn came downstairs wearing a dress today." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. "Oh," Michael said finally. "And how did you react?" The question caught Amir off guard. He'd expected shock, maybe even agreement with his anger. I yelled. I told Quinn to take it off, that it was ridiculous." Michael sighed. "Amir, buddy, I hate to say this, but I think you might have messed up." "What? How can you say that? My son was wearing a dress." "Your child was trying to tell you something important," Michael said gently. "Something that probably took a lot of courage." Amir felt a flicker of shame, quickly buried under a fresh wave of anger. "So what? I'm just supposed to accept this? To let Quinn throw away her future?" "No one's saying you have to understand everything right away," Michael replied. "But you do need to listen. Really listen, without judgment." "I don't know if I can do that," Amir admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "You can," Michael said firmly. "Because you love your kid, and at the end of the day, that's what matters most. Not what the neighbors think, not what society says, just your love for your child." Amir fell silent, Michael's words sinking in. The anger that had been fueling him began to ebb, replaced by a gnawing guilt. "What if I've already pushed Quinn away?" he asked, fear creeping into his voice. "It's not too late," Michael assured him. "But you need to make the first move. Apologize for your reaction, and then just listen. Can you do that?" Amir nodded, then remembered he was on the phone. "Yeah, I think I can try." "Good man," Michael said. "And Amir, remember you're not alone in this. If you need to talk, I'm here." "Thanks, Michael," Amir said, feeling a little lighter. "I appreciate it." After hanging up, Amir sat at the kitchen table for a long time, wrestling with his thoughts and emotions. The sun had long since set by the time he finally stood up, his joints creaking in protest. Slowly, hesitantly, he made his way upstairs. Pausing outside Quinn's door, he raised his hand to knock, then lowered it again. What if Quinn didn't want to talk to him? What if he'd ruined everything with his outburst? Before he could second-guess himself further, the door opened. Quinn stood there, still wearing the dress from earlier, though it was now wrinkled from hours spent curled up on the bed. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying, and she clutched a notebook to her chest like a shield. For a moment, father and child stared at each other, the air thick with unspoken words and raw emotion.
Quinn,
Amir began, just as Quinn said, "Dad, can we—" They both stopped, a ghost of a smile flitting across Quinn's face. "You go first," she said softly. Amir took a deep breath.
Quinn, I'm sorry for how I reacted earlier. It wasn't fair to you.
Quinn's eyes widened in surprise. Of all the things she'd expected her father to say, an apology hadn't been one of them.
I was shocked, and I let my fear and confusion control my actions,
Amir continued.
But that's no excuse. You deserved better from me.
Tears welled up in Quinn's eyes, but she blinked them back. Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. An awkward silence fell between them. Amir shuffled his feet, unsure of what to say next. Quinn fidgeted with the corner of her notebook, gathering her courage. Dad? She said finally. I wrote something. For you. Would you read it? Amir nodded, relief washing over him at having a concrete task to focus on.
Of course. Should we go downstairs? Make some tea?
Quinn managed a small smile. That sounds nice. They made their way to the living room, the tension between them slightly lessened, but still palpable. Amir busied himself in the kitchen, the familiar routine of making tea giving him a moment to collect his thoughts. When he returned with 2 steaming mugs, he found Quinn perched on the edge of the sofa, her notebook open on her lap. She accepted the tea with a murmured thanks, taking a sip before handing over the pages she'd filled with her neat handwriting. Amir settled into his armchair, adjusting his reading glasses. With a deep breath, he began to read. Dear Dad, I've started this letter 100 times in my head, but I've never had the courage to actually write it down until now. I hope you'll read it with an open mind and an open heart. For as long as I can remember, I've felt different. Not just in the way all kids feel different sometimes, but in a deep, fundamental way that I couldn't explain. When I was little, I thought maybe I was just weird. As I got older, I started to realize that weird wasn't the right word. The right word was girl. I know this might be hard for you to understand. It's been hard for me to understand too. But Dad, I need you to know that this isn't a phase, or a rebellion, or a cry for attention. This is who I am, who I've always been, even if I didn't have the words for it before. Wearing dresses isn't about shocking you or anyone else. It's about finally feeling comfortable in my own skin. When I put on that dress today, for the first time in my life, I looked in the mirror and saw myself. The real me. Not the person everyone expected me to be, but the person I actually am. I know this is a big change, and I know it might take time for you to adjust. But Dad, I'm still the same person I've always been. I still love sci-fi movies and hate Brussels sprouts. I still want to study marine biology and travel the world. The only difference is that now I'm finally being honest about who I am. I'm scared, Dad. I'm scared of how the world will treat me, of how my friends will react, of what this means for my future. But most of all, I'm scared of losing you. Your love and support mean everything to me. I hope that even if you don't understand right away, you can try to accept me for who I am. I love you, Dad. No matter what happens, that will never change. Your daughter, Quinn. Amir lowered the letter, his hands shaking slightly. He looked up to find Quinn watching him anxiously, her tea forgotten on the coffee table. "Quinn, Amir's voice cracked, and he had to clear his throat before continuing.
"I had no idea you were going through all of this."
Quinn nodded, twisting the hem of her dress between her fingers.
"I wanted to tell you so many times, but I was afraid."
"Afraid of me?" The thought sent a pang through Amir's heart.
"Afraid of disappointing you,"
Quinn clarified.
"Afraid you wouldn't love me anymore."
Amir set the letter aside and leaned forward, taking Quinn's hands in his own.
"Quinn, listen to me. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, you could do that would make me stop loving you. You're my child, and that will never change."
Tears spilled down Quinn's cheeks, and Amir felt his own eyes growing moist. "I'm sorry I made you feel like you couldn't come to me with this. I'm sorry for how I reacted earlier. I was wrong, and I hope you can forgive me." Quinn lunged forward, throwing her arms around her father. Amir held her tight, feeling the sobs that shook her body. His own tears fell freely now, years of misunderstanding and hidden pain pouring out between them. When they finally pulled apart, both of their faces were tear-stained, but there was a lightness in the air that hadn't been there before.
"So,"
Amir said, wiping his eyes.
"Where do we go from here?"
Quinn took a deep breath. "I don't know, exactly. I'm still figuring a lot of things out, but I'd like to start using she, her pronouns, if that's okay. And maybe we could go shopping for some more clothes? Ones that feel right for me?" Amir nodded slowly.
"I think we can do that. It might take me some time to get used to the pronouns, but I promise I'll try my best."
A genuine smile spread across Quinn's face, the first one Amir had seen in what felt like years.
"Thanks, Dad. That means more than you know."
They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their now lukewarm tea. Amir's mind was racing, trying to process everything he'd learned. There were still so many questions, so many uncertainties, but looking at Quinn, at his daughter, he knew that they would face them together.
"Quinn,"
he said softly,
"I want you to know that I'm proud of you. It takes a lot of courage to be true to yourself, especially when you're afraid of how others will react. I'm sorry I didn't make it easier for you, but I promise I'll do better from now on."
Quinn's eyes welled up with fresh tears, but this time they were accompanied by a watery smile. "Thanks, Dad. I love you."
"I love you too, kiddo. Always."
As the night wore on, father and daughter talked more openly than they had in years. There were difficult moments, misunderstandings to be cleared up, and a lifetime of assumptions to be reconsidered. But with each passing hour, the wall between them crumbled a little more. By the time exhaustion finally overtook them, the first rays of dawn were peeking through the windows. Quinn had fallen asleep on the couch, curled up in her dress, with a peaceful expression on her face. Amir draped a blanket over her, pausing to brush a strand of hair from her forehead. Looking at his sleeping child, Amir felt a swell of love and pride. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, he knew that. There would be challenges, both within their family and in the wider world. But as he watched Quinn sleep, Amir made a silent promise. No matter what came their way, he would be there, supporting and loving his daughter unconditionally.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!